Shalom everyone. This is a video in which we are going to talk about what is the soul according to Kabbalah. Um, you probably have heard different versions of what the spiritual body of a person is composed of, but here we're going to talk specifically what Kabbalah says or how Kabbalah describes or classifies these different levels of the soul. This video is a follow-up on other videos that I have. The videos are called What is Spirituality? There's a first part and a second part. I have put the links in the description below in case you want to go and look at those videos first before you see this video, since they're related. And in this video we're going to do or use some of that information in order to explain what is a soul according to Kabbalah and how this soul interacts with the body or interacts with what we call matter. So the first thing we need to understand is that what we call the soul is the light of the Creator inside the vessel. It's the feeling of life inside the vessel. It's how the vessel, how the creature, how the person feels the Creator. We call it how connected it is to the Creator, or we call it, basically how the person feels and has attained some kind of level in spirituality or in the spiritual ladder that Kabbalah describes as the Sefirot. Now, according to Kabbalah, the levels of the soul are felt according to the revelation of this light, this godliness inside the vessel. So according to what we attain, that's the level that we're going to feel, the level that we're going to connect to. Something very important to understand is that the soul as a whole is one. What we call the different levels is just different levels of revelation and concealments that we are going through. And as we are in this world of concealment and we reveal something, we call it attaining a higher level in spirituality or achieving, or as a spare or discussion today, connecting to these kind of levels of the soul. As always, Kabbalah doesn't invent anything. We always follow the Torah as our guide and map in order to study and reveal these hidden concepts. And to start, in Deuteronomy chapter 32 verse 9, it says, Ki helek Adonai amo, for Adonai's portion is these people. And which people they're talking about in the same verse is going to say, it's Jacob's people. And why it says, there that is these people are the portion of God, right? The reason is that what we need to understand is that the soul is something that is from the Creator. It's something that is part of the Creator itself. Even though it has different qualities, it is part of the Creator. It's like the Baal HaSulam in his introduction to the Zohar says, it's like a rock that is carved out of a mountain. The mountain has all these qualities, and just because the rock was separated by a instrument, it does not mean that the rock doesn't have the same qualities as the mountain, right? So in this case, what it's saying is that we are part of this creator. We're part of this creation. We're part of this plan of the revelation of godliness. And the soul is basically a Tselem Elohim, basically a structure according to the Sephirot, is structure according to the image of the creator. So we have basically this similarity of the creator, but even though we're similar, we're not the same, right? Remember, we're a little rock compared with the mountain, but we have these qualities that we can achieve, and this is what the soul is all about. The soul has these qualities that we need to achieve, and we're going to learn about this, how we can achieve these qualities according to different levels of the soul. Where do we get the idea of these different levels of the soul? How do we know that there are different levels of the soul? For this, we go to the zohar, zohar with the Sulam commentary, and Lech Lecha, where in items 96 and item 99, he says that there are 3 levels of the soul. These 3 levels are called the Nefesh, the Ruach, and the Neshamh. And then we're gonna explain, what each of these levels, have to do with body, the way we think. Also, in the Midrash Rabbah in Bereshit 14:11, he says that the soul has 5 names. So we got from the zohar that says there are 3 to the Midrash that says 5. A lot of people think that this is a contradiction, and in reality it's not. It's just that in one level it's talking about what is called the or pinimidis, light that is inside the vessel working in 3 levels, and also the other one is including the other 2, which are a surrounding lights that are called all makif, which are the Chyah level and the Yehidah level. And we're gonna touch base on that and those 2 as well, so you can understand what this actually means for us and our development. Now, if you are the kind of people that read the Torah often, you're gonna find that there's a commandment mentioned a few times in which it says, that you cannot eat any blood at all, because basically the soul of that animal it resides on that blood. You're gonna find that in Leviticus 7, Genesis 9. You're also gonna find it in Deuteronomy 12. And it's mentioned many times because in that life force of a living organism is called the Nefesh. This is the first level we're gonna talk about. It's called the Nefesh. And it resides, it says, in the blood. It gives this nourishment of that energy to the whole body, to every organ, that kind of stuff. Physically, the blood not only carries all the nutrients and oxygen in order to keep the body in a well balanced manner, right? But also the blood, and when it comes to spirituality, has a meaning. This is why we're gonna see as we read the Torah, there's sacrifices, and these sacrifices require the spilling of blood, of animal blood, which is nefesh. And it's because of the symbolism, just as this animal is dying, giving its life for me, basically I should feel myself as the one that should be sacrificed, should be the one that should be put to death because of my sins, right? And of course there's deeper meaning when it comes to that, especially when it comes to the letters, which we're not going to go through it, but there's a relationship between the word Adam, which is the name of the first man, Adam, the name Adom, which is blood, and Adamah, which is land or earth. Okay, but there's another level. There's a level called Ruach, And this level is basically what we call a wind. Some traditions call it the spirit. And this term is found in Genesis 1, verse 2, and it's referring to this Ruach Elohim, to the Spirit of God. And it refers in other places, that you're gonna see, like great people that have lived in the world, like people that are advanced spiritually, where it says, these people have the Ruach Elohim in them, the Spirit of God in them, and that's something to keep in mind when we're studying the Torah and we see this. We're talking about this Ruach level. Above the Ruach, there's another level called Neshamh, and this Neshamh it's basically the breath of God. This is where God breathes into Adam's nostril, right, and gives him Nishmat Chaim, a soul of life, which is the Neshamh. And we find this in Genesis 2, verse 7. Now, these are the three levels that we talk about and where we can find them, right, in the Torah. When we go to the writings of the Arizal, the Arizal tells us that you as a human being and I as a human being, we don't have access to these levels of the soul right away. That we need to work and merit or attainment of these souls, because in the way we're living right now, we're living in the level of the behemoth, the beast, right? We're in the level of the Nefesh. We're in the level of just living like the living organisms of planet Earth. And we're not living like human beings, that level of speaking, as Kabbalah call it. So, because we're materialistic animals, and we haven't overcome our desires yet, and achieving any kind of dominion over our inclinations, which will raise us to the level of Ruach, we haven't achieved any mental greatness or mental clarity or what we call expansion of consciousness, just as in order for us to reach the Neshamh level, we still in that level of the Nefesh. Now these other levels are still there in potential. They're there, but they're still not realized yet. We need to get there. Now, what we need to understand is that these three levels, the Nefesh, the Ruach, and the Neshamh, when they're achieved, when they're attained, when we have overcome our animalistic behavior or desires and egoistic inclinations that take us to that level of Ruach, and we have achieved these mental changes, this expansion of our consciousness, which take us to the Neshamh. These are what we call orpinimi. These are internal lights. These lights are within the vessel. They adhere to the body. And it's very interesting to understand this, because when you look at the book of the Zohar, you're gonna find the following. So we're reading from the Zohar with the Sulam commentary from the Parsha Achareimot, and the items are 215 and 216. 215. Rabbi Abba said to him, "With my soul, Nefesh, have I desired you in the night. With my spirit, Ruach, with me I seek you." He questions. He should simply state, "My Nefesh in the night," meaning it should say, my soul in the night, with my spirit within me, I seek you. Why write also, I seek you, when it should say, it seeks you, as it refers to his spirit? He answered, we have established that it resembles, in whose hands is the soul of every living thing, and the breath, literally the Ruach, of all mankind. Meaning that my Nefesh and my Ruach are not his own names, but are two lights, Ruach and Nefesh, clad in a body, as explained further. 2:16. Come and see that the Nefesh and Ruach always exist jointly in the world. We have learned the total service that man must serve the Holy One, blessed be He, is as we have learned, and you shall love Hashem your Elohim. He needs to love the Holy One, blessed be He, with his very soul. This is referred to as an utter love, the love of his Nefesh and Ruach. Just as these Nefesh and Ruach cling to the body, and the body loves them, so must man love the Holy One, the Creator, blessed be He, and cling to Him as the love of the Nefesh and Ruach. This is in essence the verse, with my soul I desire you in night, meaning my very soul that is clad in my body. So here it's telling us basically that we're going to have the Nefesh, and the Nefesh, like we say, is the life force. But there's two souls that actually work together, and these are the Nefesh, the Ruach and Neshamh. The Ruach and Neshamh are these lights that are above the Nefesh, but the Nefesh and Ruach are always jointly in this world, right? And we said that this Ruach is basically this level that have to do with our desires, right? We have egoistic desires. We need to make sure that we change our desires from egoistic to altruistic. That's what Kabbalah is all about. And we do that by starting to love our neighbor or friends or other human beings and creatures in the world as ourselves, right? So what happened when we die, right? It says we're gonna see further that the Nefesh stays around, and there's a reason why the Nefesh stays around, and we're gonna talk about that. The same Parsha, Acharei Mot, in item 259 of the Sulam commentary says, the Nefeshot of the righteous are in this world to protect the living people. This is known as Nefesh. It does not depart this world and is present in the world to watch and know about and to protect the generation. The friends say that the deceased are aware of distress in the world, and the punishment of the wicked in the land is by that Nefesh, as it is written that Nefesh shall be cut off from his people. So what we have here is that when a person dies, if the person is a person that is advanced, like a tzaddik or teacher, very advanced teacher, the Nefesh stays around, and it stays around because it's a kind of like a beacon of light and also a well of light. And that's why you see some Kabbalists and some people that visit the graves of these righteous people trying to tap into this light that is still there. But what we're going to see is that the Ruach and the Neshamh, they're actually clothed in the Garden of Eden. They're on a different level. But that does not mean, that the Nefesh is not fed by the light of this righteous person, that is his Nefesh and Ruach is above, right? It still continue helping those below somehow. But while in life, the Nefesh and the Ruach all together, that inspiration, that desire, that way of living and all that, in our physical life, they're together, the Nefesh and the Ruach. This is why we follow the mitzvah. The mitzvah are basically to correct our desires, 613 desires. And we do that by using our life force, or Nefesh. And when we do that, we achieve that level of Ruach. And when we connect to the meaning, the real meaning of each of those mitzvot, meaning we do the proper correction, the proper connection with the proper Kabbalah, we achieve a level of Neshamh. We achieve these lights on Neshamh. And this has to do with a whole bunch of other stuff. For example, for this, when we do the prayer for the sake of the name of Hashem, right? In which we are connecting the Yod He with the Vav He and things like that before a mitzvot. It's about this, about connecting ourselves to these different lights. Now, there's people that actually achieve these three levels, the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshamh, in their vessel. And they can then have access to higher levels of the soul. And these levels are known as Chyah and Yehidah. But before they achieve these levels, they need basically to do the corrections to the first three levels mentioned. These three levels appear as or pinimi, internal lights within the vessel, and the Chyah and Yehidah appear as or makif. They're surrounding lights, like an aura surrounding the body, right? So just for the sake of understanding, imagine a person, and inside the person you have Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshamh, and surrounding it you're gonna have these kind of like lights, two lights. Those are the Chyah and Yehidah. In the Torah, we're gonna see that the soul sometimes is referred as Chyah, and that's gonna be mentioned when God breathes a soul into Adam, making a Nefesh Chyah, Genesis 2, right? The Chyah, as I mentioned, sometimes is gonna be described by Kabbalists, by the Kabbalists, as an aura, as a surrounding light. It is not within the body. The light glows outside the body. But this light, believe it or not, even though it's not within the body, it's what plays a major role in how we interact with other people. And this is the light that depending how connected we are to it and how much we're getting from it, which is our potential, right? Our potential for being spiritual beings 100%, is how we are going to have these interactions with others. I don't know if you heard people saying, I have a bad vibe, from this person. It's because of the level of connection that we have with these lights, whether it is the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshamh, or the Chyah and Yehidah. Now, in the writings of the Rizal, we're gonna see that the Rizal describes the soul as 5 different levels. So it's one soul with 5 different levels. And we're gonna have the Nefesh, Ruach, Neshamh, Chyah, and Yehidah, and they're gonna be abbreviated, when you read the writings of the Ari, as Naranjai. Now, each of these levels of the soul, even though they're divided into 5, inside each of them you're gonna find also 5 divisions of the same light. So you're gonna have Nefesh, Ruach, Neshamh, Chyah, and Yehidah. And inside the Nefesh, you're gonna find then that you're gonna have a Yehidah the Nefesh, a Chyah the Nefesh, and Neshamh the Nefesh, a Ruach the Nefesh, and Nefesh the Nefesh. And it goes on and on, it's like a fractal, continues and continues. So each of them are divided into 5. Meaning that when we have these divisions of 5 within each of these levels of the soul, you're gonna have a division of 25 levels, or smaller parts of the soul, like a ladder, basically, that we need to climb. Also, this is what we need to understand, is that Each of these parts are composed of 613 sparks corresponding to the 613 mitzvot. Each of these sparks, each of these 613 sparks are composed of 600,000 smaller sparks. And when you multiply all these together, we're gonna get 9.195 billion, or 9,195 million sparks. So it is said, when we're looking at this now, from this point of view, when it comes to numbers, it is says in the Talmud in Yevamot 62a that the Messiah, son of David, will not come until all the souls of the body, the guf, have been finished. There's a place called the guf. What is this guf? This guf is, it translates into body, is the body of Adam HaRishon. So it says, until all souls that are destined to inhabit physical bodies will do so, as it is stated, for the spirit that enwraps itself is from me, and the souls that I have made. So what does this mean? This means that there's a place called the guf where all these souls are coming from. And according to Kabbalah, this guf is the body of Adam HaRishon. When Adam HaRishon sinned, it broke into pieces. So it broke into pieces in the same way that we just mentioned before, in which we have these 25 small parts that are composed of 613 sparks, and each of these 613 are composed of 600,000 smaller sparks. And this is why we get the 9 billion sparks that come from the guf, which is very interesting because it has to do, with 9 Sefirot, the 10 Sefirot being Keter, right? Because everything is according to the Sefirot. Now, if we look at the world population today, we are at an estimate of 7 billion people in population, right? And we're expected in the year 2050 to reach 9 billion. So why is this important? What does this have to do with what we're talking about here when it comes to the soul? So what we're saying is, once we reach that critical mass where we're gonna have a population that many people on planet Earth, we're gonna be in a milestone, and we reach already a milestone in which we have a higher possibility of achieving what we call messianic consciousness. But we're not there yet. And how we can get there is by us understanding who we are. What are we made of? We're made of this Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshamh. We have a guf, a body. The body contains the Nefesh. The body can also contain the Ruach and the Neshamh if we work with our qualities, right? And we can achieve these levels of Chyah and Yehidah as well. We can tap into the light that they represent and somehow help these future generations. We might not be there, right, to see it, but we can help these future generations by us advancing and tapping into this light, so we can help them advance and achieve Gamar Tikkun, which is the end of correction. This is the importance of why we need to work on ourselves, because by working on ourselves, we are actually creating this environment, we're creating this platform that will launch the spiritual advancement of the next generations. And for this, we need to understand where we are in history. As mentioned in the beginning, make sure you watch the videos on what is spirituality, because these levels of the soul is the baggage that we have, the baggage that we carry, not only personally as individuals, but also uh, as a whole, as a humanity. And because we have to go through certain corrections due to the sin of Adam, due to this breaking of that soul, we need to make corrections within ourselves that are going to unite us once again as one man and one body. And we have what is called the 6,000 years of correction, in which we have 2,000 years of Tohu, 2,000 years of Torah, and now we are in the 2,000 years of Mashiach, which doesn't mean the Mashiach is going to appear now, which if we do our corrections properly and we have this critical mass of people working together with the same desire, we can achieve that. But we are in that correction in which our ego is at its highest. We are at the moment in which we are not only hungry for the material things, but we're also hungry for something that we don't know, and is the light that is missing in our vessels. We're trying to fill vessels with material things, just like the animal that eats and lives only to eat, without noticing that probably just eating to get fat and then be sacrificed, right? We need to break from that level of the animal and reach the level of the speaking, which is the level of being a human being, being a spiritual agent in the physical realm. And we do that by getting ourselves out of a level called the level of the nations or the path of pain. We need to start correcting, start ascending, and developing what is called a point in the heart, which is a little dim light that is within ourselves, and developing and using it to guide us so we can then break away from this concealment, cross what is called the barrier of spirituality, which is called the Maxon, and achieve this revelation of godliness where everything is good. But in order to achieve that, if you have seen, we are growing in population on planet Earth. We think that spirituality is something that I need to achieve by myself, only me. And it's not me, it's we. We have to achieve it together. We have to have a critical mass of people working together to do that. And we achieve that by spreading the wisdom of Kabbalah. In fact, if you really look at it, it has exploded so much. This wisdom, that people all around the world are seeking different ways to get this wisdom. There are different schools, different groups, different YouTube channels that you're gonna find just like this one, in which people are teaching the wisdom of Kabbalah. And why is that? Why now we have this wisdom very available? In the past, only a few could study this. Now most of the people can find it, any information about Kabbalah for free. Most of the books are being translated into different languages, and that is because this desire is grown beyond what we call the people of Israel, and is in the nations, because inside the nations there's other sparks that need to be lifted up, and in order to achieve this spiritual level for the whole humanity, everybody needs to come on board. And we do that by basically going out there talking about Kabbalah, not forcing it because we cannot force it, but spreading, talking about it, exposing people to at least the name of Kabbalah so they can get curious about it. And then if they are ready for it, they will ask more questions, and we can then uh, go more in depth on what is Kabbalah all about. Kabbalah is not about mysticism and how this letter can bring you, if you meditate on this letter, can bring you good luck, of how this and that. It's not about that. Kabbalah is a science. It should be treated as a science. It's a spiritual science, and it somehow resembles a lot quantum physics in many ways. uh, but it's very important to understand that it has to do with our internal works. It has to do with our relationship with other people. It has to do with how we connect to other people, how we connect to ourselves first, to other people, in order to connect with the Creator. And that's how actually the whole system works. That's how the system is going to be put back together after it was broken in the sin of Adam. So, in order to summarize a little bit what we talk about, remember that the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshamh are our pinimi. Our lights are within the body, within the vessel. The Chyah and Yehidah are our makif. These are lights are surrounding the vessel. The Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshamh, we achieve them as we work, or with our desire, as we work, also in our mental awareness, or mental expansion, or conscious expansion, right? And knowing this is going to help us know that we are little bits of a bigger soul that broke into many pieces, and now we're trying to put back together. And that soul is the soul of Adam HaRishon. And that we need to understand that because of us being part of that soul and coming from different parts of that body, we are not going to be the same. We're not going to be having probably the same tikkun or correction, because it all depends where we came from. We have 600,000 root souls, and these 600,000 root souls, each root soul, each descendant of that root soul has a different correction. So don't expect your correction to be the same as another person. That's how we don't force things in Kabbalah, because we don't know where we came from. Right? We don't know we came from the head, from the hand, from the foot. We don't know. This is symbolically speaking. With the language Kabbalah, it's called the language of root and branches. But we don't know which level we came from these 600,000 souls. So each one's going to have a different correction, a different connection. So don't expect people to experience Kabbalah the same way you might be experiencing it. Or don't expect yourself to experience Kabbalah in the same way that other people do. And don't expect even to understand what Kabbalah teaches the same way that other people do, because it depends on each person in their own level. Okay? And that's why we have the writings of the Arizal talks about the Gilgul Neshamh, which is a reincarnation, or wheel of the souls, in which some of these things, these corrections are mentioned about people doing things and that, but in reality it goes deeper and much more than that. There is just mentioning why some people go through certain things, why some people are born a certain way according to what they did in previous life. But there's much more than that. There's also the root souls, and that's why some of the corrections are going to be different from us, for us, and some corrections are maybe similar. For example, some of the corrections that we go together, it's national correction, social corrections. Sometimes as a nation, people that live in that nation go together through a correction. For example, people living in certain countries in Europe will not have the same correction as people living in North America or South America. The people in Africa may not have the same correction as the people in Asia, because they are come from different root souls. They're different. They were born in different traditions and countries for a reason, in order to correct those 600,000 sparks that came from Adam Harishon. And that's why it's important. And Kabbalah says, that we don't judge because we don't know. We really don't know. Okay? We will have a second part in which we're going to go in depth on each of these levels of the soul, and from basically the perspective of just studying each level without putting them in the context that we just had in this first part, which is a context of who we are, what are we composed of, and why is this important? Why these 5 levels of the soul important? Why we need to know about them, where they come from, which they come from this one soul that broke into 25 pieces, then 613, and then 600,000 pieces, and now it's, what is this all about? What is the basically the anatomy of each of these levels? And that's going to be in the second part. Once again, make sure you watch the videos in which we talk about what is spirituality, because these are related. These things are related somehow, in that way you understand the historical point of view of our development, spiritual development, and now you're understanding our personal point of view of our development, which is based on our soul. So I hope this has helped a little to understand the soul. And in the next class, like I said, we're going to go in depth on each of these levels. Until then, Shalom.